our things on, man.
Yeah, our pro clips. Dude.
It's how you know we're pro, dude.
Right.
If your headphones have a weird little thing sticking off the side of it, it signifies that you're an elite pilot.
It's because we're gamers, boys.
Hey guys, Level Cap here, back with another Star Citizen podcast. I've really got the Star Citizen bug these days, and I just can't stop playing and talking about the game. A few weeks back, I did a Star Citizen podcast with Board Gamer, where I discussed all of my newbie questions. And today, I'm joined by Avenger 1, somebody who specifically focuses on the PvP combat in Star Citizen, and is honestly extremely good at it. I would certainly say he's one of the best. He streams on Twitch and makes content on YouTube, which is where I found him, and he was kind enough to hop on today and talk all things Star Citizen with a focus on the combat side of the game. Well, speaking of elite pilots, I figured since my audience has no idea who you are, but I've been aware of you for a bit now, you're pretty darn good Star Citizen pilot. And how did you get into just space sim combat? Because it's such a niche area, right? Like there's those, we all know about the guys who do like they buy all the crazy peripherals and they get into flight sims like DCS hardcore. But the space sim world is pretty new to me. It's probably pretty new to most people listening to this podcast, I'd imagine.
Dude, I started when I was like 6 years old. Not joking. So I remember like when I was living on the farm, my dad brought this game home called Star Wars X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. And it was this old like 90s, you know, you had this little stick with like one red button on top, and it was a Star Wars game, right? And I'm sorry, it was X-Wing, right? X-Wing was the
there
first
was a bunch.
one,
There was X-Wing,
right?
there was TIE Fighter. Didn't they do like an X-Wing versus TIE Fighter or something?
Yep.
Yeah.
It was X-Wing, TIE Fighter, then Versus, and then Alliance, and then that was it, right? But I grew up on those games, man. Like those games. And it wasn't, you know, you're looking back, it's pretty standard stuff. It's like you roll to the right, you roll to the left. It's just simple, right? But I remember getting like hooked because I was already a huge Star Wars fan like all those years ago, right? And that's kind of what got me into the whole like genre of like space shooters. And then from there, I started playing like the free space games and Descent. And, you know, there's so many. Elite Dangerous came much later. But I remember I started playing EVE Online after that. And I was always like, you know, like, oh, I really wish I could just fly my ship instead of just double clicking in space. And, you know, I just wanted to have manual control over my ship. Right. And then I played the Jan's F-18 games when I was a kid, like the like kind of pre-DCS type games.
Yeah,
right?
I remember those. I played a couple.
You remember
of
those? Right. And and I mean, that was, you know, I've been gaming since I was, you know, super young, and that was my thing. Right. But I always loved the spaceship combat games, like more than anything. But it was weird because like even Chris talked about it, you know, Chris Roberts talked about how there was like a PC genre like golden age, and then it just kind of consoles killed everything. Right. And
yeah, it's kind of like an ebb and flow. I feel like PC's having a pretty big comeback right now, you know.
But I feel
it's interesting too. Consoles are doing great too. The new tech is great. If people could just buy it, you know.
I know. You know, so it's you know, eventually PC went through its like, you know, slump, and then it started making a big comeback, right? And you know, games like space shooter games that didn't do well, like there's no space shooter really tech, you know, games like Star Citizen for the console. You know, you'd have like the Star Wars games and like Rogue Squadron. But it would never be like a really sim-based game like DCS.
And Rogue Squadron was cool, but you're right. It was basic, super basic, right? Because you could control it on the N64 controller. Remember, so you had like six buttons and a janky joystick or whatever.
Buddy,
you're like, I'm an X-Wing pilot.
But it was so fun though.
Yeah, and now we got dual joysticks. I copied your setup. I've got my dual analogs going. I think I'm going to add a throttle onto the side of it just because I tried out mining the other day, and I'm like, you got to control the mining power with a throttle. Like, no other way to do it. So, yeah, peripherals are just going to start piling up on my desk to control this game, but it is pretty crazy. But isn't that the cool part about it, though? Where it started. Oh, for sure, dude. I always looked at those SimPit screenshots of like some guy's crazy simulation pit where they've just got a million like MFDs stuck around their desk and like
game
tons of monitors and wraparound screens. And I'm just like, who are these people that spend like 10 grand on their system setup? And then I'm like, oh, I think I'm becoming that guy now.
Yeah, but you know what? That being that guy is awesome.
It is. Nobody else thinks so, but man, like everybody in that world, it's like, oh, sick setup, dude.
Oh,
Other people see my office and they're like, what the nerd
like,
is going on in there?
You know what though? It's like here's the thing about PC gaming, right? Which you probably get too, and a lot of your audience probably does too, right? It's like, it's one thing to mouse and keyboard stuff, but then when you start adding all the peripherals, like if you're a driver, you like driving games, right? Having the driver's seat, having the shifters, having the steering wheel, all that stuff, right? There's a level, it's almost like stepping into VR, but almost in a better way because you have the physical tactile feedback, and I think
it's indescribable to somebody who hasn't done it before because just having the dual stick and like being able to push a little left on my stick and nudge the ship just exactly where I want rather than like tapping on my keyboard keys, like tap, 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 tap. That's how I used to do all my racing games back in the day was like tap, 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 tap. It's like this ridiculous input. And now it's just like, it's smooth as butter, feels awesome, like some guy said that he set up, he bought a lever, one of those Logitech like flight levers for controlling your engine throttles. And he just set up for like engaging Quantum Drive and Star Citizen because it's cool, Like I just want to throw a lever when I go into hyperspace. I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's a good idea.
But that's the thing, right? It's as much like a work of art as it is like something functional that you can immerse yourself into, right? I mean, especially with Game Glass and all that stuff out, like you can sit in essentially a real cockpit, to some degree, right? All you're missing is the actual G-forces being applied to your body. As my co-pilot. But, it's...
I'm sure you'll have that someday. You'll be upside down in your stream, right? You'll be like, oh,
I thought about, like, there's some setups you can get for, like, race cars where they have hydraulic systems set up. And, you're, like, flying all you're just, like, over here, and then you're over here. But those are, like, $20,000, $30,000. Like...
I'm having a hard enough time just keeping all my USB devices like plugged in and not like turning off and shorting out and stuff. My track
I've had that recently too. I've had like sometimes my things will just turn off and I'll have to restart the whole the whole system just to get it to remember that.
It's hard enough as is. I don't need hydraulics added to the equation,
or do
got hydraulic fluid leaking on the carpet, man. It's gonna get crazy.
You imagine just like, one sec, guys, I can't go to the shop. Why not? I got hydraulic fluid all over the floor here.
Yeah.
Bro.
So you've been going hard on Star Citizen for quite a while. I mean, like, you're streaming what, like 3-4 days a week, maybe?
About 5 days a week.
5 days a week.
Yep.
You do a lot of PvP. That's kind of your thing, right?
That's my jam.
I haven't seen you do much mining tutorials.
It's tough. It's tough to keep me interested. I got a little ADD, and I got to stay active. But it's also like I feel like once you kind of get into PvP, there's that rush, you know what I mean? And that rush, like I just don't get that rush from mining rocks. It's lethargic. It's relaxing. If I'm doing it with somebody, that I enjoy spending time with, then it's a different story, right? But there's a sense of, it's like, it's hard to explain. I call it the PvP shakes, right? Where you feel your body getting hit with adrenaline. You feel your body getting excited about what you're doing. You know what I mean? And it's, people get it in tournaments. People get it when like you're playing a game like DayZ and you're like, oh my God, I could die. It's just, games where there's some kind of loss associated to death that like, you get nervous. You actually start to double guess, like, is this the right decision? And usually you get a lot of games, death, like, it's just respawn and go back again, right?
Battlefield, you can die 50 times in a match and like you're just like whatever. But this
sometimes
game,
it's annoying.
If you die, it's not quite as punishing as Star Citizen, but as EVE Online, right? You die in EVE Online, you're just like, oh God, you like you need to take a break.
About that later on. That's what I think.
Yeah, but, frankly, I haven't played recently, but still, if you die in this, it's a pain in the butt right now, and it's going to get harder as it goes on, and the bugs stop killing you as much, and they can start cranking up the difficulty of like, hey, guess what? If you die, like, it's not just going to be like getting back out there. Like, it's going to be a setback.
Yep. And that's what there,
you want.
I think. Oh, buddy. Because like we got the Arena Commander stuff for like the kind of, I got to get my hours of seat time in or whatever. But I think having some kind of system in place where the death feels meaningful and it promotes surviving rather than like, oh, I'm just going to log in and suicide into the ground here and, respawn back at wherever, right? It's just, it kind of takes you out of that immersive feel where you see your buddy just flying to the ground. Like, what did he do that for? It's like, oh, it's faster to die and just respawn than it is to, fly over there to do that, right?
Well, and I'll admit, when Star Citizen was still mostly in the concept phase and they started talking about like eating and drinking and all that, and I was like, oh no, here we go. Like, here we go, adding on game mechanics that are going to like suck the fun out of it for me. But I will say I have an appreciation from EVE Online for things that take a while for the point of taking a while. Like in EVE Online, you can't just be over at your friends, like next to your buddy to back them up if they get engaged in combat, unless you're exactly set up to do that, right? You have to plan to be his backup for whatever he's doing. If he's mining or something like that, you got to be in system. You got to know where he is. You got to be ready to go. And this is like the same thing, right? It could take you 10 minutes if you got a crappy quantum drive to jump across a single system. So if your buddy's out mining somewhere, it's like, well, you think you can survive 10 minutes while I fly over there?
Well,
like, not likely, So I like that element, where it's like, hey, there's a real meaning to distance in this game and planning and being close to friends and going out with groups of people and the risk of playing solo versus with friends. And like, it really adds like a new risk reward dynamic to the game that I think few games offer.
Well, how many games have you played where working as the team has like really amped up the experience, right? Pretty much every game.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Almost every game, I would say.
Some games like, GTFO or, recently that they're very based around like you gotta, Rainbow Six Siege, like games like that, or even like Battlefield, you can still do solo Battlefield, but I mean, it's so much better of an experience if you get some friends together and get like a real squad or squad. Squad is like the team-based game, right?
Although you can go sniper in that and just
you could be a recluse and just hang out.
I'll be honest, I've had
gonna be like, hey, what are you doing?
Yeah, definitely some of my top killing games have just been me in a bush with a sniper rifle.
Just bushwooking it up, man.
Just making people angry, when they find you, they like purposely like stab you to death, and you're
using an alt account, not level cap gaming, just shooting people.
Yeah, I will say though, like when I got into PlanetSide 2 a bit. Like that game does team tactics very well, but sometimes I wanted to approach the game from like, you know what, I just want to chill and I don't want to listen to 10 guys on comms like yelling about, whatever is going on that day. I just want to chill, so like I always appreciate games that are like, yeah, it's mostly supposed to be about playing with friends and teamwork, but if you want to chill on your own, the game still like is pretty fun for that too. And I think Star Citizen is striking a good balance for that too, because I can go off and do some mission running on my own and have some fun. I haven't tried solo piracy stuff yet, but I will.
I like it just because there's more risk, and my mantra has always been I just want to be engaging all the time, every day, as much as I can, just fighting from one spot to the next. I mean, to me, the perfect day would be I wake up and play with my friends and I log into let's say a capital ship like an Idris, I wake up on the ship and they've got all the ships lined up on the deck and we're like, okay, let's go. And we just go out and we just go from one fight to the next. And that's what we do,
Well, that's cool. That actually kind of segues into what I wanted to ask you about next, because Star Citizen's come such a long way since its inception. And early alpha days and where it is now. It's at a pretty good spot now. I know it's like buggy as heck, but compared to like if you've been following along over the years and you jump in now, you're like, oh my God, it's amazing. Yeah. But it's got a long, long way to go still. Like we've got a featured dashboard of just like all these crazy cool things coming. What do you like envision your future with this game? Like when it's like more or less feature complete with like all the ships and all the main gameplay loops existing, what's your like ideal day in Star Citizen?
Have you seen The Mandalorian? So
yeah, I got that one.
For me, it's always been about leading a fighter squadron with some kind of capital support fleet, right? I like the idea of a nomadic style of play where, like I said before, like, you get all your friends together, okay, at 7:00 tonight, op starts. I want everyone on the flight deck. I want everyone's ships stacked up, ready to go. And that's what we do. We just go from one planet to the next looking for fights, whether it's doing criminal missions because that's making us money, or pirating other players because there's maybe nothing else to do, or whatever the case may be, or it's just really lucrative. We want to give it a shot. But also it's all like the flip side too. It's like, what if some people need protection and they're getting hit over and over and over again? They just can't seem to get rid of these pirates.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I got no problem bringing the squadron in to deal with that. The idea is, we are students of war. It's just constant perfection of the thing that we enjoy the most, and that is combat. That is, securing the kills and maintaining some kind of tactical superiority. And that maybe comes from my like military, heritage inside, where that's just like, that's the way I like doing things. I mean, for me, games are, it's like the game, to me, Star Citizen is combat. Like it's, to some people it's not. But to me, I always look, there's a reason why almost every ship has guns on it. And like, the whole game is based around Squadron 42's campaign, which is about a war between an alien species and humans. And, to me, I feel like the whole excitement of Star Citizen is this kind of sci-fi fantasy. What would it be like to like live in this, like, wartime?
Yeah.
Why do you love Star Wars, right?
And it's enhanced by the depth and persistence of it. Like it's better because not everybody's going to be an elite fighter pilot, right? Like you want
exactly nailed it.
Those guys that are just running trade routes. You want those guys that are just looking for the best mining spot on some planet, because whether or not you're going in to gank them or protect them, it's adding that level, right? So like maybe you are a pirate squad down the road, but maybe you're also a mercenary pirate squad. Like some big org is like, you know what? Rather than just fight these guys forever, why don't we just give them like a monthly fee to like protect us, right? So now all of a sudden you guys are like mercenaries. You don't fight this one org that's making tons of money mining somewhere. But when they call you up and they're like, hey, these guys are trying to gank our mining operation, you come in and blow them away or whatever.
So I want to say a funny story because it's human nature. And that's the beautiful thing about like there's this idea I find in the community that like they think like a lot of these folks think they're going to get away with a lot of stuff. And I'm just like, you might be able to get away for a certain amount of time, but at some point the players are coming for you. And if you're going to the high risk area where there's lots of money, it's human nature. You're going to have to interact with these people, right? And I remember I used to play EVE Online a lot, right? And there's a lot of different ways to play EVE Online, right? You want to mine all day, you can mine all day, right? You want to live as a recluse inside a wormhole, you can live as a recluse inside a wormhole, right?
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want to scam people in Jeddah and tell them that you're going to be their friend and then steal all their ships. Like you can do that too, right? But for me, like I had a small team and we would use stealth bombers and that's all we would do. And we would go out into the universe like a roaming band of people, and we would just go from one planet, one system, one region to the next, and we'd just be hitting targets over, making money, just getting into fight after fight after fight, and just perfecting the craft of that game when it comes to like Black Ops warfare and, kind of cloaky, behind enemy lines, moving around, right? And we loved it. We really did, right? And it's the same idea with Star Citizen. Now I'm not on the stealth side of things. I mean, we're going to use stealth as we see necessary for situations, right? But the idea is, we go from one area to the next and we just kind of, blast things as we go, right? And if we need to fall back and recharge or whatever, that's cool too, right? But I don't see us owning like a planet or owning lots of resources and having these like these big alliances. Yeah. Because a lot of these Star Citizen groups, there was like 10, 20,000 player groups. And to me, I'm like,
they might own a whole planet.
I'm down. I say, hey, go for it. You know what I mean? Like that's so cool, right? But then it'd be nice to be known as a crew that, it's like, oh, you're bringing the Avengers to a fight. It's like, oh, okay, this is going to be
it's like everybody there. Yeah, everybody in your crew is going to be elite, so to speak, right? Like it's not going to be like just a random group of gamers who likes to fight. It's going to be
I don't see here. I don't like the word elite because I feel like there's this. I used to run a crew like that, where it was like, I only want the best, right? Okay. But the reality of things is when I got older and I started playing esports and squadrons and stuff, I had played for a few different teams, and I had played for one team they were all about like, we want the best only, right? And it just, the atmosphere just wasn't very good, it was very stressful, And then I started playing for another team, and they were like a bunch of guys. They're like, hey, we just started playing squadrons and we just got really good at it. And, and then I said, you know what? I want to join your team. I'm going to leave this team that I just won a tournament with, and I'm going to join your team, and I'm going to see what happens, right? And we went on to win even bigger tournaments and more of them because I really enjoyed spending time with those guys, and they're all great guys. And to me, you know, this idea of like this elitism, right? It like catches some PvP orgs. It's like, you got to be careful, right? Because it's like, you need to, from my perspective, I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying, like, you know, if you're a PvP org and you have this, like, we are going to be the best all the time, that's a lot of pressure on the pilots.
Sure.
To
It kind of
perform
sucks
at
some of the
best.
fun out of it too.
Exactly. Right.
You want to goof off and just have a dumb day where you guys do dumb
Yes,
stuff
you
and
know,
whatever.
but you need that healthy kind of balance between expectation of performance and also, like, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, you're not getting salary. You're not getting a salary from playing Star Citizen. So at some point you got to enjoy, you know, you aren't actually
Speak
a
for
real,
yourself, bro.
you know, you're not getting paid by United Earth Empire. You know, you're getting paid by Kinko's down the road if that's what you work for. Who knows, right? But
yeah.
you know,
What do you think
right?
is some of the coolest stuff that you are doing or have done currently in the persistent universe? Because we got these ideas of like, oh man, as the gameplay loops progress, we're going to be able to do all this. And, you know, half of the game is fantasy, but there's a huge part of it that's reality right now that I think feels inaccessible to a lot of people, but is actually available if they just kind of like look for it, right? So like, what's some of the crazy stuff you guys are doing now?
So I think the most fun I've had recently was doing like the 890 carrier offs, right? So we'd take the 890 jump and we put about 6 Archimedes all stacked up together. We'd have each pilot, you know, assigned to a ship.
For anyone who is not intimately familiar with Star Citizen, the 890 jump is the biggest ship in the game right now. It's a luxury yacht, so it's not necessarily meant to be a combat carrier, but it has it has the largest bay at the moment. So you can cram as many of these tiny little snub fighters into the ship as possible, and then fly it somewhere and just unleash the bees, as you guys say.
Yep, release the bees, you know. Right? But it's fun, you know, because the snub fighters don't have a quantum drive, so they have no choice but to be a parasite ship to some capital ship. And the 890 jump with its large fighter bay, it can carry the fighters, right? You could do it with the Carrack, but to a much lesser degree. You can only have 2 Archimedes on the Carrack.
I think the Hercules could fit a couple, right?
Yeah, you can. But the thing with the Herc, though, is like, it's not as great of a platform. You know what I mean? Like, the 890's got tons of space. The Herc does fit some, but it's not exactly a great combat ship. I mean, it does have turrets and stuff on it, but, you know, with limited mobility, it can only do so much, right? The Carrack, on the other hand, is my favorite ship in the game.
The Carrack is nice. The respawn on the Carrack is just sort of like, it takes it to the next level.
But the 890 has that too. But the thing about the Carrack is it's a, you know, the Normandy from Mass Effect, it's got that kind of vibe. You know, it's a long range military special forces reconnaissance Black Ops ship. That's what it was designed for. And then eventually the Navy was like, okay, we're going to sell this to civilians, but it's going to be the much undergunned, much less technologically advanced. You know, that's what it was for, right? It was to basically go ahead of the fleet as a recon and do kind of covert insertions and stuff like that, which is cool because the Carrack is just a wicked ship. You know?
Yeah,
and
it's beautiful,
Anvil, which is the best.
Yeah, I gotta say the Carrack is up there. That was one of the first ships that came to like concept phase that I like just impulse bought immediate. You know, like a bunch of other ships, I was like, I gotta think about this for a while. But Carrack was like, I'm getting this immediately.
You're like right away. You're like, nope, we're getting it.
I was sold by the size of it, you know, and like the fact that it could carry a fighter and like a rover, but also the cockpit, man. Like just that crazy, beautiful, gigantic bridge that you can see everything around you. I'm like, yeah, this is gonna be a ship that's just gonna make the game look beautiful as you're exploring and just going around. And also, like, who doesn't like having tons of quantum fuel and giant turrets on your ship too? Right. You know, like you can just go anywhere.
I mean, think about it this way, right? And this is what gets me excited about like talking about Star Citizen is imagine this is your gameplay loop, right? You get down after a day's work, whatever, and you sign on. You're like, hey guys, let's play. You know what I mean? And everyone wakes up on board the Carrack, right? You log in and you're somewhere in the universe. You know what I mean? Like, let's say Timmy was driving, you know, and he's like, hey guys, we're now in this system. And you wake up because, you know, last system you logged off somewhere else, but because you logged off on the ship, you wake up with the rest of your crew, right? You wake up, Walk around the ship. You're like, okay, what are we doing today? You know what I mean? Go to your cartography deck, take a look. Okay, here's what we're going to plan. We're going to go here today, do this, whatever, do some missions, whatever, right? And, you know, you've got supplies like food and water. You know what I mean? Like the ship has, you know, you might be out for a couple hours doing whatever. You land on a planet. Pyro has some cool stuff coming out where there are creatures that are living on the planets that are what they call apex predators, right? So they're these angry crabs that are just like terrifying things.
Yeah,
from
giant
like
angry crabs.
Starship Troopers.
Not small
stuff,
angry crabs. Yeah.
Very large angry crabs.
10,000 tiny crabs they chase.
Yeah. And most of the time they live in caves, right? So you're going to have to land and then take the rover out and like either you don't really
I hope
have
there's
to
a Starship
explore.
Troopers planet, right? It just got me thinking, right? What if it's just completely covered with those bugs, right?
Just
and you,
bugs everywhere.
They sense your tremors, right, on the ground, and then they come swarming out of little bug holes all around you.
There's so many.
Could be awesome, man.
I mean, I'd be down for that. I mean, every sci-fi has some kind, you know, it was Genosins on like Star Wars, you know, is the bug hunt stuff. Aliens, right? Like there's a lot of great sci-fis have these, you know, these parallels.
Well, and Star Citizen is unashamedly borrowing from all the best sci-fi IPs around, and I think everybody's very happy about that. Nobody's like,
why not?
Hey, this looks like a Star Wars spaceship. You know, nobody's
the Scorpions.
Like, yeah, or the sandworm. You know, I wonder where that idea came from, right?
The spice flows.
Everybody's so excited for it, right? I can't wait. And then I was landing on one of those moons the other day. Ida, I think, and it's storming and you can't see anything. And I'm like, this is like the dropship landing sequence in Alien, right? It reminds me just of that, you know? So it's so cool how realistically they've been able to recreate all of these like environments that you've like envisioned playing in a game universe, which is very cool. Getting back to like just like the life on board a ship stuff, the thing that gets me right now is the fact that some of the ships, like I think not the Avenger, I always say Avenger, Vanguard, has like a little fold-out gun rack, and like just putting guns on the gun rack and then like coming out and be like, what do I want for going on this like mission right now? That just like tickles me in a way that like no other game has got to. Like, oh, you can stock this with like armor and weapons, and then somebody comes onto your ship and they're like, oh, I don't have anything, and you're like, here, let me just hit this button, and the like Matrix style gun rack comes out, and they're just like, oh, okay. I think I'll take one of these and one of those. Like, it's so cool.
Guns, lots of guns.
Yeah.
Well, cool, I mean, the Vanguard is what it's designed to be. It's a long distance heavy fighter, you know, it's supposed to be at the tip of the spear with everything else, right? I mean, that's exciting. You know what I mean? Now, there are downsides to the Vanguard being physically large, right? And not being the best atmospheric dogfighter recently. I just got into a fight with one actually this afternoon, and it struggles. You know, it struggles at low altitude. And a lot of folks... You were
fighting in one, or you fought one?
I fought one. I killed it, shot it down, but...
Oh, yeah.
Once I got through the rate fight and I was behind it, it never shook me. And that's the problem with these Vanguards. Is you got to be careful. It's a high energy fighter, right? You're supposed to come in at high speed. If you get a good pass on them, if you get some damage on them, great. But then you got to extend out and turn around again, because if you try to turn with a light fighter in a Vanguard, you got to get some altitude, because you only be able to do that. Yeah. In space, it's different because you're a lot more free, but in atmosphere, you're much more restricted, right? So if they get behind you, you know, you got to hope you got a turret gunner to kind of push them away. I've been
very impressed with the atmospheric flight model so far. I hope they keep pushing it more, but it is really cool. Just where like the density of the atmosphere, for anyone who hasn't played the game, if you're coming in on like a full scale planet, your ship's going to behave very differently, like real atmosphere would. And if your ship is shaped like a jet fighter, like it's designed to cut through the air, it's got aerodynamics, then great. If your ship is shaped like a brick, it's not going to handle so well. Like, you're going to have to bring your speed way down. If you try and push it with afterburner, it's going to start doing weird stuff in Atmo. But then you'll come down to like a moon, and it's got like 50% atmospheric density, or even less sometimes. Sometimes you got barely any. And now you can like push it pretty fast, you know, 3/4 of your like space speed, right? And now like certain ships, so different ships will handle differently depending on like what moon you're on. You might not be able to handle like some of these weird tanky ships that aren't aerodynamic on a planet, but you might be able to handle them on a moon, all right. I'm like, oh, that's cool. You could pick like different home bases that like cater to like your ship that you like flying the most or something.
Mm-hmm.
I have a weird question for you. To kind of segue off this topic. Star Citizen kind of markets itself, especially with Squadron 42, as like, you're going to hop into the seat of this awesome fighter, this awesome jet fighter or space fighter, right? And you're going to team up with Mark Hamill. And you guys are going to go.
Old bitter Mark Hamill.
Yeah. You're going to find all these like mean looking aliens that fly all these cool looking ships that pulse red, and you're going to blow them out of the sky. Oh, you're going to go on all these missions and save the universe and everything. And it's going to be awesome. And it looks very cool. I'm totally sold on the concept. I believe the game will probably do a good job of allowing everybody to experience fighter pilot simulation in a pretty enjoyable way. Probably have some sort of difficulty slider if you want to get all hardcore about it and whatnot. But if you kind of suck at flying or space sim stuff, it'll have noob level and it'll kind of guide you through it, right? I imagine they'll have something like that. But when you get to the persistent universe, which is where everybody plays, and it's kind of like, it gets much more hardcore. People are out there for themselves. They want to make a dime. If you're running cargo or if you're doing a thing and you've got something valuable and somebody else wants it, they can try and take it from you, right? Like, that's the way the universe is set up.
Yeah,
how many
it's the
people
Wild West, baby?
How many people do you think are going to come into that game thinking they can be elite fighter pilots, and then reality is going to smack them across the face, and they're going to kind of like have to like take a step back and be like, maybe I should do some mining for a bit. Like, what do you think is going to happen? Because I feel like the game, or at least the initial idea of it, markets itself as like, yeah, everybody's going to be a cool fighter pilot, right? And some people will be doing some other stuff, but I think a lot of people are going to come into the game wanting to be that awesome fighter pilot. But the skill curve, the skill ceiling with being a top tier fighter pilot is like, it's like, forget about it. If you're a shooter fan, forget about it. Like, I can come into a shooter game and kill some of the top players in the world just because they didn't see me or weren't ready for me. I know I'm not a top player in the world, but I can do it, right? Or even a novice could do it, like, from time to time. But in this game, like, if I run into you in universe, I'm not going to kill you. We could meet 100 times and I'm going to lose every one of those fights unless you like hit an asteroid by accident or something weird happens.
It does happen.
Yeah. That would be my strategy. I'm going to take you into an asteroid field.
It could work for sure, actually. I mean, there are limits to certain, like, for example, like the Arrow, right? It's one of my favorite ships because it has the highest skill ceiling right now, right? You can choose your engagements. You can be very precise with it, right? So unless you're at a certain competency level, to engage the Arrow is probably going to end up in death, right? Now, you're talking about the Luke Skywalker experience. You know, everyone gets Squadron 42 and they all get to experience what it's like to be Luke Skywalker. You know, and it's a pretty dopamine, injected experience, and they'll probably really enjoy Squadron 42, and I really hope they do. But when you get into the persistent universe, like, that's where the rubber hits the road, right? That's where, in a game that's, thank God, not like EVE Online, where, you queue up a skill queue and then, you have dogfighting level 5 in 6 weeks.
Right. It's timing battles, right? You're like, engage blaster number 3 now. Engage blaster number 4 now.
Which is, don't get me wrong, EVE had some great things about it that were a lot of fun, right? But in that aspect, I wasn't really that sold on it, right? I wanted the more tactile feedback. So if you want to get dogfighting level 6, or level 5, you've got to put 6 weeks of actual time every day into like, so you as the person are the actual character in the sets, right? And that's what I really like about the game, because I'm not a refuel guy. I'm not a mining guy. Like, those things, I understand how they work and I understand the mechanics of them, and I understand, how miners are not think, but like what their concerns are and what things they need to worry about. And, so I can either better engage them or better protect them. I need to understand that side. It doesn't mean I have to be a great quantanium miner and know every little piece of equipment and know exactly which ones work really good, because that's the skill, right? You might get a guy who's been mining for a while and he's cracking rocks like this and he's just really good at it. And I'm just like, I'm doing like 1 rock an hour and he's on like rock number 4, right? So that is really important for the game, right? But people need to temper their expectations, and they need to accept the fact that
with what
Look,
they're going to be capable of. Not what the
Yeah.
game is capable of, but like when
Some
they get into
people-
the game,
Yes.
who they're going to be.
Yes. Some people, unfortunately, will get hit with the reality stick and it'll hurt. And that might turn them off for the game. Some portion of people, no matter how hard you try, there's going to be an attrition. Some people will get hit by that hard stick and be like, I lost my ship, I lost this. And it happens a couple times and they go, I'm out of here. See you later.
Mhm.
Right? It's the kind of Tarkov thing. But on the flip side is if they do it right and they have areas of the universe that kind of ease people into it, they don't just throw them into Avenger 1 meat grinder right off the bat. You know what I mean? That's because guys like me, we're not going to want to stick around Earth and Terra and these other areas that are highly, highly contested with the Navy. Because let's be honest, we're probably going to be bad guys, right? Because that's where the rewards are. That's where the money's to be made. That's where you can probably get the most ships. And there's a lot of exciting gameplay, right? Not to say that you can't have that at Earth or other places, but I mean, let's be honest, right?
If
you
they
want
do the
there to
game
be a
right
high
and
sec,
they
low
have,
sec,
if it's Eve style, where, you know, if you're going high sec and you're doing bad stuff, you're going to die pretty quickly if you stick around, basically. So like, if they do it right and make the noob friendly zones where you can work on fighting NPCs and I don't know how else you would actually kind of increase your skills, but I guess the NPCs are eventually going to get
arena command,
much higher skill. So you could probably practice pretty effectively against them at some point.
Yeah. If they do the AI right and they have the AI fly like how a typical PvPer would fly to some degree, or at least in the same style, and then it'll be less of a bump from like NPC engaging to engaging a player, right? And that's what you want, right? And you don't want it too much so that, you know, because right now, unfortunately, like you're shooting NPCs down.
Oh yeah, it's night and day.
It's
night
yeah,
and day.
and then you fight even like a amateur pilot with at least knows the basics. It's a totally different game, right?
Mhm.
So, but you know, we give CIG the kind of benefit of the doubt. It's, you know, they're still kind of figuring out their AI and all that stuff, and I mean they're still figuring out the flight model. So how would you expect them to write a good AI system when the flight model's still kind of like, we're kind of doing this now, and we're kind of
it does
out.
make me wonder quite
You
a
know?
bit because they're talking about this sort of this weird intermediary quantum jumping flight mode, right? Where you can like go fast, but maybe have control or something. They haven't really detailed it much. I'm like, man, if you guys are still developing the basics of maneuvering, how is Squadron 42 going to come out in like 2 years, right? Like, is Squadron 42 going to be like, back in the day, this is how ships controlled, and then the PU is going to come out and it's like, it's totally different now.
Oh God, yeah. I think, you know what I think? I think Squadron 42 will take longer than people realize, but I think we're getting close-ish to like a finalized-ish flight model. Like, I think we're about 2 years away from having like a Squadron 42 flight model. You know what I mean? Where the things they're adjusting now are less the overall mechanics, and it's more like, okay, this ship has slightly too much thrust, so we're going to temper that a bit, or this ship is a little bit too powerful.
Nuanced balance as opposed to like underlying mechanics.
And that stuff can be translated directly and, you know, update the game, and it affects Squadron 42 as well, right? But what you're not doing is you're not making it so that, okay, there's entirely no thrust vectors on some of these ships now in some places because we've changed the model, or we're taking away jerk profiles, or like we're fundamentally changing the way the behavior of the ships is. If they don't do that, if they get the fundamental behaviors down, which, I mean, like they've pretty much had that for a while now. They've just been playing with the tuning, right? And like certain, like right now, our bottom thrusters are really powerful to kind of simulate lift. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know,
What kind of spaceship
benefits.
changes are you looking forward to the most? Like in terms of what's been teased?
I liked this the semi-symmetrical thruster values where you had like strong bottom and strong top thrusters. So vertically you could move really powerfully, but then your side thrusters would be a little weaker so that you'd want to kind of move in that. Because right now,
are they going to
bottom
add
thrust,
that? Is that what their plan is?
It's rumored. It's rumored that the team is kind of looking at it and kind of being like, okay, because right now what's happening is ships are kind of fighting only in one direction because, you know, there's really no other, you don't have enough thrust in other directions to really make it, you know, but as long as they get it so that it's called the wobbling and stuff. The ships are behaving too erratically. If they're too erratic, then you can't track it, and you end up breaking your joysticks because you're trying to track every little movement. It's just ridiculous, right?
Right.
So there's
I've heard the
tuning.
spring snap on Discord.
Oh yeah,
you guys fly pretty hard.
some yeah, it happens. You know what I mean? But CIG also has made a model where you've got to really twitch like that, right? So I'd like to see a nice happy in between where it's a fast-paced game, but it's not like the ship is behaving so twitchy. It's like every little, it's smooth translate. Like Star Wars Squadrons, I always use this as like the gold standard, because to me, the game wasn't 6 Degrees of Freedom, but the behavior of the ships and the speeds relative to each other with the weapon velocities relative to each other and the nature of how the weapon and gunnery worked and just the whole package of like flight combat, you could easily give those ships and squadrons, 6 Degrees of Freedom, and the game would feel awesome. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah, ultimately you want something that looks more like a World War II combat environment, fighter pilot environment, where like elite fighter pilots coming up on each other. I keep using the word elite. Keep coming
elite
up
dangerous?
on each other. Yeah, elite dangerous fighter pilots come up on each other. But like a good pilot coming up on the tail of another pilot, the guy defending isn't doing all this erratic maneuvers and the guy's like trying to track him, It's like you're operating at high speeds and vectors and thrust mechanics, and the skill is like knowing how to get yourself right on that guy's tail. Yes. And lining up for that nice clean shot, and you see those like World War II combat videos of guys taking these shots, and these are like top tier pilots going against each other, and it's a smooth thing. It's not this like shooting at like this target that's bouncing all over the place and you're kind of like jerking your stick all over the place. And like, can you imagine how unpleasant that would be for the pilot? You're just breaking your neck constantly.
Yeah, right. But there's a reason we have ESP, because the ship's twitchy behavior is so erratic that it's literally an assist to kind of slow it down. And I've always been a
ESP stands for enhanced stick precision. For anyone who doesn't know it, it helps the joystick get on target once you're within a certain amount of degrees of aiming at an enemy ship.
Yeah, I've always
it's
been
like
a big believer.
It's kind of like aim assist for consoles, with a little bit more nuance to it.
Yeah, I mean, because you need it, because unfortunately joysticks aren't pixel accurate pointing devices like a mouse is, right?
Yeah.
So there needs to be some kind of, because CIG wants to find a zone where it doesn't really matter what controller you're using. I've never subscribed to like, there's two fundamentally different. Like you'd have to really,
you got to give them credit for where it is right now, because
for sure,
because I've never seen a game where people on mouse and keyboard, somebody on an Xbox controller, and somebody with dual joysticks and throttle pedals can be on a fairly equal playing field if they're the top of their game on those devices. Like,
true.
Hopping onto your Discord and playing in Free Flight with some of those guys using an Xbox controller, I was like, oh my God. Like, they were taking out some of your top guys. And I was like, that's very impressive that they've made this game playable on just about any sort of device, because you don't want the game to only be fun on dual sticks, right? You're like, okay,
100% agree.
Buy $1,000 worth of gear and then you can start having fun,
Right? Yeah. No, I agree. And you're absolutely right. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I get a little bit in my own head. I'm just like, everyone's got to have joysticks, everyone. But it's like not everyone has access to them. First of all, they're expensive. Two, they kind of sometimes break, and you got to get mounts, and sometimes you don't even have desk space. Or you might not really want to be Luke Skywalker's chosen one, kind of. That's not the fantasy you're looking for. You know what I mean? You want to get in the seat and you want to be effective, but you don't want to.
Or you just find you'll find that you're way better with keyboard and mouse. It's like playing Battlefield games. They did support joysticks, but it was just better on keyboard and mouse. So I was like, I would love to fly a helicopter with a joystick, but I'm going to lose to most of those guys on keyboard and mouse, So
and that's
just sort of right? You pick what works the best.
Yeah, and that's what they got to be careful for. As long as they don't make a meta where all the top guys are on mouse, because stick just can't compete. That's my fear, because I think sticks are like, if you're flying a spaceship like a fighter, I mean, don't you want to have that experience where you really feel like you're flying the ship? I mean, the best way to do that is joysticks, right? It's like playing a racing game with Formula One, and there's a esports tournament and nobody's using like steering wheel because they're like, yeah, it's better with mouse. It's just like, what? Okay,
Yeah, no, it is silly. It's very silly. There's a lot of potential changes coming up for PvP that I'm kind of curious about. I've heard some of your takes on it, but some of the more interesting ones I think are the velocity, slowing down the velocity of fighter ships, right? So when you're engaging another ship, the idea is that you're not going to be going 1,000 meters per second. You're going to be going, what, like 600 max is like kind of the idea, I think?
1200s are max SCM. I mean, cut that in half. 600 max SCM, because the game plays nice in that zone, right? And then I think they need to drop the velocity of some projectiles, so that, because right now, if the higher the velocity, the easier it is to hit. That's simple. Right. So if you bring speeds down to like 1200 for like, repeaters, that kind of stuff, you bring the overall speeds down,
and then cannons become more viable. So now you can
bring the cannon velocity up and bring back a little bit more of a symmetrical thruster system where there's not so much of a dramatic switch between bottom thruster being super powerful and top thruster basically.
What do you think about, I know tricording is where is that flying in one vector where turning at 45? What's the name for like turning at a 45?
So we just call it the 45.
The 45. You know what I mean? What do you think about the 45 mechanic? Because it's always kind of blown my mind that it seems nonsensical in terms of how you would design a ship, right? Like if you're designing a fighter craft for space, you just rotate all the thrusters 45 degrees, and now pulling back on the stick gives you the fastest pitch, right?
So, see, here's, you're going to get me in trouble. so with physics and just the way thruster placements are, the more thrusters you have facing in a direction is going to give you more thrust. That's simple. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, even modern satellites tricord in a certain sense, you know what I mean? Like to get them to go, because they have more, pushing this way, 45 this way, 45 this way, it's going to push you like a triangle to a point. Right. And that point goes towards your vector. Right. So, they want to have a space simulation game. And I like that idea because also when you bring the Gladius and the Arrow and stuff down the atmosphere, they fly like atmospheric fighters. You can't turn on tricord because you're going to be pushing your aerodynamically, you're going to be resisting that so much. It's just not going to work. Right. So you do get the atmospheric style in atmosphere. And then it's also something when you go into space, you think like, oh, okay, cool. Tricording and stuff. So here's the thing. I personally, for me, like I really liked the Star Wars Squadron's way of doing it, where it's, basically World War II planes in space.
You pull back on the stick, which is a much more intuitive and natural way of like, if I want to pitch as quickly as I can onto a target, I want to line up and then pull back.
Roll into the shot and pull and full pitch into your target.
But at the moment, for anyone who's not intimately familiar with dogfighting, it's you roll onto a 45 degree angle and then kind of pull back into the left or the right to get the fastest rate of turn, which I mean, in real life, that would snap your pilot's neck off, right? Because you're going to be like this the whole time, like most uncomfortable dogfighting experience in the world. But
maybe they might, and that's the thing, they might do the G-force management that way. Who knows, right? There's a lot of ways they can do it. Some people like tricording. Some people don't. Some people think it should stay. Some people think it shouldn't stay. I've kind of not so much given up, but no matter what SIG does when it comes to the flight model, I'm going to try and master it the best I can. I'm not a big fan of tricording. I've gotten kind of used to it. So now it's just kind of part of my vocabulary. It says, just tricord and chase, right? But I like the intuitive nature of, if you're going to chase someone, use your main thrusters because they're the biggest and just go towards them. You know what I mean? Like, it shouldn't be so like, oh, like if you're a rookie pilot, like, can you imagine? Like, it's just another thing. It's such a silly.
Well, I found it very unintuitive because I never would have known.
Right?
I never would have known. Yeah, because even when you are turning at a 45 degree angle, I'm not measuring it, so I don't immediately notice that I'm getting a 10 to 20% faster turn rate.
25% turn rate.
25%.
It's a lot faster.
Yeah. So I don't notice that. And I'm like, why are all these guys out turning me? Doesn't make any sense to me. Like, whatever. I'm not doing the right thing with my other thruster mechanics or something. But so it's not intuitive. And then it's just a weird skill set. Once you learn that that's how you're supposed to do it, it's just so unnatural to want to fly that way. And it's like, I've flown a lot of flight sims growing up. And sure, it's all realistic flying, but even the space stuff has always tried to mimic fighter plane stuff because it's just more intuitive, right? And if you're going for truly realistic space sim, I mean, we're not going to be fighting it under a kilometer away from each other. It's going to be, okay, fire the missiles from 2,000 kilometers out.
It's going to be the Expanse, you know?
Yeah, exactly. You're just going to be watching little blips disappear on a radar screen, which is not fun. So, like, if
not
you're
to get off topic,
yeah.
But did you watch the Expanse in its entirety?
Yeah, please get off topic. Yeah, the Expanse. Yeah, I love the Expanse. I started reading the books. I think I got through the third book, and then I realized, because I had already watched most of the show, I was like, I think the show did it better. Like, because the show read the books, and then like there's little moments in the books where I was like, you know, the character's motivation for doing this in the show is actually way better than the books. And I was like, oh man, it's like the books actually just had the show just had a second pass on the books, and was like, let's just fix all the weird little stuff in the books and make it better. So I stopped reading after like the third book, because I was like, I think the show just does a better job.
For a sci-fi show, man, like that was the one sci-fi show since Battlestar Galactica that I've been like, oof, like
so
just
good.
So good, right? And I'm not going to spoil anything, but there is a scene. You probably remember what scene this is. I'm not going to give anything away or spoil anything, but there is a certain ship, a large ship. It's being chased by our Rossi, and I remember the Rossi is getting chased, and she spins and boom, fires. And they look at the map and they're like, "Okay, but the projectile velocity," and I'm like, that right there is talking about the issue we have with Star Citizen with the velocities, and like, is it in our response time to move, right? Because he's like, we're not in range yet. Like, they could just move if they fire, right?
Yeah.
So it's just, you know, and
also, who put such a noob pilot in charge of such a big ship?
Yeah, I know.
Like, he's dodging to the same way every time. Like, come on. Yeah,
yes,
why'd you give him the flagship of your Navy? This guy just learned how to fly yesterday.
God, this idiot.
Yeah, you would be yelling at him if he was in your training server.
Buddy.
You're like, you're turning to the same way every time, dude. Your movement's super predictable.
Too predictable, bro.
Yeah, I'm not giving you the flagship of my Navy. Come on.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh man, what a great show. God damn it.
Show is so good. I want them to do spin-offs, because the books have spin-offs. They have like a whole Fred Johnson like like story of like, you know, because he has this backstory of like how he became who he is. And I'm like, I would love to see like a mini series on that, you know, like maybe one season of like Fred Johnson's full backstory. That'd be dope.
Or just
like,
any
I just want more
man.
Yeah.
Like, come on. Or what they should
show us the war between the first war between Earth and Mars. That would be dope.
Yeah, that would be freaking
You know what's cool
sweet.
about the Expanse and Star Citizen is like the realization after exploring Stanton, which is the only system in Star Citizen at the moment, is that you could have the whole universe in Stanton if you wanted to, right? And you could just like ultra populate and detail out all those planets and asteroid belts and make tons of cool little stations. And you could, you know, it could support the thousands of players that you want on that server shard or whatever, because it's big enough, right? There's enough 100%. Surface area on all the planets. And it's really interesting, because I was like, man, this game could have this same level of depth in a single system, but they're adding, you know, allegedly 100 systems at some point. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting concept. I was like, they could just stop developing all those other systems and just like bring it in. Not that I want them to, like, but it just
custom systems, and then there's going to be apparently like 1,000, you know, like Elite Dangerous kind of thing, right? Where, because I'm a little worried about that though, because like Elite Dangerous, there's like, it's like a mile wide and an inch deep. You know what I mean? It's like once you visit,
well, they're not doing that with this game, obviously. Like each planet and moon is very unique. But was it Morphologist or one of the other Star Citizen content creators? I think it was Morphologist, but. Like kind of did the math on like, if they're going to make 100 systems, they have to launch like 3 planets a month or something like that. Or it was something crazy like that. It was some crazy number.
He did some little bit of critical thinking, and he came to the conclusion. I think most people came to this like, wait a minute.
This is way too many. The way I look at it though is like, this game will be 100% playable with like 4 systems. And if the features are all in the game, you could just open the floodgates and be like, come on in, people, like have a blast. And as they start adding more systems, it's just that's like 20 years of amazing content expanding the game. And then somebody gets into Star Citizen in 20 years and it's just like, what do I do? I don't know. There's too much stuff to do.
Right.
And just like, welcome to the universe.
Right? It becomes the game. You know what I mean? Like it's just, what other companies can compete with that style of development? Because it's been developing for how long now? Like almost 10 years.
Oh yeah. Over 10, I think. No, or 10 or over 10. But yeah, this is like, I was thinking about this the other day. I was thinking about like every gamer on the planet should be so excited or at least keyed into Star Citizen, because there's no other game on the planet that has had this much like dev money and dev time and like
drama.
The feature list drama for sure, but the feature list is insane. But also coming from other games where it's like Battlefield or anything else, you get a patch over there and it's like, here's a new little trinket. And like Star Citizen's quarterly patches are like, I mean, they're pretty big, you know, like
better,
if you're keyed into the game, it's like, oh wow, like coming from another title to Star Citizen, they're like, yeah, we're adding like whole new fundamental underlying features to the game and building out new gameplay loops and like with every patch. So it's more exciting, I think, to follow the development of this than just about anything else out there in the gaming world. It's pretty crazy.
I mean, other than games like Grand Theft Auto, you know, like, or even the Battlefield series too, right? It's like, you know, they kind of go from one Battlefield to the next. So they are kind of working on the engine, you know, and like Arma's same kind of thing, right? Where, you know, they've had Arma 1, 2, 3.
I wish they would just stick with one game, dude. I think everybody needs to stick with the, like, just evolve the same engine over and over rather than introduce a whole new series.
But then they would have to have some kind of subscription or microcent, like, because there has to be some kind of cash revenue, right?
Yeah, they'd have to do live
new
service
title,
well.
Right? Or they'd say, look, you know, we're going to make Arma like Halo Infinite, you know what I mean? Where it's like, okay, we're done making Halo. It's just going to be Halo Infinite. We're just going to build Halo from here. You know what I mean? So there's lots of different styles to do. I like the style like how we have here with Star Citizen, where it's like, you just pick that game, you just keep working on it, right? And keep digging it and keep updating and building it. I mean, I like.
What do you think's going to happen post launch? You know, that mythical time period. If it ever happens, because I mean, like the funding model now is concept ships, right? So or spaceships, right? So you're buying ships for lots of money.
Yeah, you're buying promises. That's basically what it is. You're buying a promise. Like, we promised to make this ship. And I mean, they have been great. You know what I mean? Like, strategy isn't perfect, right?
What do you think about them continuing concept sales after the game? Like, after the game, like, is at alpha beta? Yeah,
that's fine. Honestly, I mean, because here's the thing: if you're a Carrack owner, and then you got on board your Carrack, it's pretty wild. Like, it's pretty cool getting on board your ship, because these ships are unlike a lot of other assets in a lot of other games. Like, they're hero assets in the sense that they have everything. You know what I mean? Like, they got so much going on in these ships. Like,
one ship is like a whole map to like another game. Right, like
DCS is the same kind of way, right? Yeah. You buy the F-18, it's a different thing. You buy the F-15,
it's like an $80 package, right, to get those DCS packages.
But you get $80 worth out of the plane, right?
Well, and that's just the cockpit alone and the plane dynamics itself. You're like, yeah, this was a whole team of guys working to create like this incredibly detailed, incredibly rich environment,
right?
Yeah,
I mean, that to me is like. I mean, that's the dream, right? It's like, people can spend their money on whatever they want, right? And if it's worth the money, then let people buy it, right? And it's not like they don't have to buy it. And I always tell this to the guys, I just laugh, right? Because I'm like, bro, I made like, you can make 100 million credits in like a week. And that's if you're lazy. Like, you know what I mean? Like mining quantanium and doing other things. Like if you play, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's no ship in the game that you can't earn with in-game money within a reasonable amount of time. So you don't ever have to buy anything with real money. It's just, you know how people are, right? They're lazy. And they're just
you want it right away. You want it every time there's a reset. And
they want the security of the ship. They want to never have to work for it. They want that ship, and they don't, you know, they want to always have it in their inventory.
Or the value of LTI, which we still don't really know what it's going to be, right?
It's not going to be that big. Like it's, if you run out of insurance, you're not going to lose the ship. You know, you'll still have ownership of the ship. It just won't be insured, and you'll lose a lot more. You know, like you might not even be able to pull the ship out of the hangar in the sense they'll be like, hey, you have to insure it. You have to insure it with like the base minimum or something or whatever, right?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So LTI is just basically it's a security net for people who are worried, like, oh, you know, I don't want to lose my ship. You're never going to lose your ship.
Especially you don't want to drop $1,000 on some crazy spaceship and then you're like, well, it blew up because of some bug and now you don't have it anymore.
And like some of these insurance profiles are literally 10 years. It's like, bro, in 10 years, like they'll have the Scorpius Mark III.
Yeah, your grandkids are going to be flying the ship.
Yeah, put it in your will. Here, take my Scorpius. NFT Scorpius.
When do you think some of the piracy gameplay loops are actually going to be more persistent?
That's I'm really so we could do that. We could do it right now. The only thing we're missing, is tractor beams or some way
something to board another ship,
something to arrest motion, right? Because you can disable people now, you can EMP them, you can distortion them, and if the economy starts to pick up a bit more people will be more willing to ship stuff. And, that enhances the piracy, right? And there is reasons to take people's stuff. I mean, they have armor and cool stuff. I mean, you might board them just for their armor and equipment, right?
Or salvaging coming really soon. You'll be able to just stop their ship and strip all its armor off.
There you go, right?
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying, right? It's like there's cool ways to do it. And all we need is to have something to, once the ship is disabled, to stop it, and then we can get on and board it, right? Because right now boarding it, like you can't board at velocity, like it's just not.
Can you open doors yet if they're locked?
Yeah, you just have to shoot them open, whether you mine them open or you use a weapon like to damage it to the point where it opens, right? So that's
already in there. So you really do just need to stop the ship now.
That's it. Just arrest the motion and boom, you're on. You know what I mean? And it's what you can do now. What we've done sometimes is we've dragged people into atmosphere and then we distortion them and they crash. And sometimes they don't blow up. And if they don't blow up, then we board them, right? Because now their ship is arrested because, the atmosphere of the planet has been our tractor beam essentially, right?
Yeah.
So there's ways to do it that way too, right? But a lot of times they thunder in at high speed and that's about it.
It'd be interesting if they modified distortion mechanics. So like it put the ship into an emergency mode where the thrusters fire or something, where it's like, oh, you're losing power or we're emergency thrusters activated and we're slowing it down or just something.
They could. Yeah. I mean, or they could just fake it and the ship just slows down naturally. But I like the idea of if you're gonna have an organized pirate squad and boarding stuff, it shouldn't be just willy-nilly easy. Like, you should have like a cutlass that's dedicated with the tractor beam. So if you're the enemy, right? Yeah. If you're the defending ship, you might think, okay, I'm gonna take out the tractor ship first because then I take away their ability to board us. You know
what do you think about the modifying existing ships, kind of like Eve did, where like you could sacrifice one of your weapons for like a mini tractor beam?
Hard points. Yeah.
Yeah. So you pop on a
they have that
utility. Oh, well, not in the game yet, did they?
Yep. So they have. So the 315 has a hard point for the tractor beam on its nose, right? So there are utility hard points, right? So it does take so we don't have in the sense like the EVE Online way where you have a size 3 slot and you can use it as a utility slot yet. That's switchable, not a thing yet, right? But some ships have utility slots and you can put tractor beams on those utility slots. I mean, they build the game. Yes, right? So that is coming, you know what I mean? Now, I don't know when it's coming. I don't think many of us do. Yeah. But I would say my guess is probably during Pyro or just before, because Pyro's going to be interesting because it's Stanton's supposed to be safe. Yeah. But it's not. Right. Now, Pyro is supposed to be dangerous. So we'll see.
And it probably will be dangerous. I mean,
but I'm sure CIG will make Stanton more safe as time goes on and make Pyro, so that, and I think that's a good thing. But I also, like I was talking about on a previous podcast where I was saying like, people are going to go where the people are and they got to be careful because there's a reason why like EVE Online has an issue in Jeddah. Jeddah 4.4 is the largest trade hub in the game, right?
I remember it.
There's a reason why there's the most kills per day by a large margin. So if you took all the kills in one day in EVE, most days, there are more kills in Jeddah than anywhere in the galaxy. Now, when there's big fights and big armadas getting engaged, yeah, obviously, right? But on the average, Jeddah has more kills in a day and in a month than the whole galaxy, right? So it's like if Stanton is safe and everyone's too scared to go to Pyro, then the pirates are just going to go back to Stanton and they're just going to start hunting people.
Yeah, because you want to pirate somebody, so you're going to go.
Yeah,
where they
even
are
if it's even if it's more risk, it's like, well, I mean, the fish are also bigger too, right? So it'll be interesting to see how they strike that balance, right?
Kill one of those whole E's or something,
Right.
hauling a full load from the moons
Oh,
or
I
something.
can't wait. There's going to be a lot of upset people.
Oh,
and
yeah.
for a little bit, you know what I mean? Like, people will at first be like, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm getting pirated all the time now, and this and that. It's like, well, you know, it's like,
Those could be some of the biggest losses in the game, because like
they will be for sure.
Yeah, because I mean, like, if you die in a fighter ship or something, like, okay, it sucks. You got to respawn. Maybe they'll have the kind of death of the spaceman stuff in the game where you come back as a weird clone of yourself or something, you know?
Yeah, they took the EVE Online route.
Yeah, and all this other weird stuff going on. But like, if you're in a fully loaded like whole E or something like that, and you've got like half of your net worth or more on a single trade run, and you're like, oh, I'm fine because I'm in HISAC or whatever, the police will back me up, and some pirate comes along and just ganks you and takes all your stuff. I mean, that could be like a year's worth of like just working and running missions, you know. It could get pretty brutal for some players, but I mean, that's also the stakes that make it fun, right? It's like everybody's got those Eve stories that you're like, I'm never going to forget this moment because of like how much stuff was on the line, or like how crazy it was that we got this person, and like he probably deleted his account the next day, you know, like
oh no, I mean, it's so true though.
It is true, dude. I did that to somebody in Eve when in the alpha of Eve. That was back when like battleships were the biggest thing you could get. And they didn't have all the like high level mining stuff, so it was all basic stuff. It took forever to get money in it. And like some dude was mining in what's the golden race in Eve? Flies all the gold ships. The Amar. He had an Amar battleship, and he was just mining in some asteroid belt by himself. And like that was the biggest ship. We had never seen it yet. It was the alpha, and that was the first time I had seen a battleship. So he must have been mining for like 2 months straight to get it, just like every day, just mining out there. And we we would fix mining lasers onto our little fighters, and then pretend to mine rocks and just get in a little bit closer and closer and closer. But we actually had them loaded out with weapons and just a mining laser in one of the hard points, right? And then just ganked them as soon as we got close enough. And it's a battleship, and we're in these dinky little fighters. So it took like 5-10 minutes to take him down. You know, it was like a long fight. And he was just raging in chat for the whole time.
You get under his guns so his guns can't track you, and then you just orbit him.
It was done.
It was done. Game over, right?
I mean, I felt kind of bad, but I remember it forever because I was like, during that combat, I was like, we're like basically robbing this dude of like 2 months worth of gameplay. That's crazy to think about. I'd never played a game that like had that level of punishment before. And I definitely see that being a possibility in Star Citizen for sure. People are just going to have a bad day. Sometimes.
It is going to be like that sometimes, right? And I think the punishment is a little steeper in EVE Online than I think Star Citizen will ever get to.
Yeah.
I do think obviously there will be some loss, but then I don't know though, because if you
I don't think you want to go
million,
to EVE's level, to be honest, with Star Citizen, because so much of Star Citizen is like this beauty and exploration aspect, right? You want people to go out into the universe. Yeah, sure. The danger is there, and that adds like a little bit of tension, but I mean, some of these planets and worlds are so immersive, so detailed. You've had like world crafting teams putting thousands upon thousands of hours into these places. You want people to see them, right? Where like, I haven't seen 95% of EVE Online's systems because like it's so massive, and just like, I'm not going to go out there and get blown up by some pirates guarding a warp gate. Like, I'm just not going to do it, you know? So like, you don't want it to be that crazy. You want people to go out there and venture. And if they get killed, you don't want it to be like, well, I'm done playing forever. Like, you know, ease them into it and make sure they know what the risks are, and then get them out there exploring and enjoying the like incredibly beautiful universe. Because even Stanton on its own, which is it's probably going to be a fairly boring system in terms of like all the other concept art they've shown for like the crazy alien worlds with like glow in the dark plants and like giant monsters that come out of the ground. Like Stanton is relatively simple comparatively in that scheme. So it's like, you're going to want to get out there, and Stanton's beautiful enough as is. If it gets crazier and crazier, like I'm getting out there the second I can, even if I am by myself in some crappy little ship, like I'm going to go.
Well, I mean, you have options, right? I mean, you can protect yourself. It's just, it's interesting to me where they're going to take it. And I agree.
I'm going to buy a ticket on the Starliner. That's how I'm going to get there.
Right? Right? Just cruise by, be like, look at that guy getting ganked. So, I mean, the skill steep, you know what I mean? If it's too great and there's too much punishment, people get scared and they back off, right?
Yeah.
Tarkov sometimes has that problem.
You got to find a happy balance.
But it's a catch-22 because every day that someone gets bladed and they're like, oh, that guy sniped you from whatever, like that loss and like remembering of like that shitty experience makes when you do make a run or you do shoot down or you stop some pirates and you actually kill them or whatever the case may be, it makes it feel so much better. And you remember that too. You're just like, oh man, it could have ended so badly. And it did.
Exactly.
Like the one time.
Those epic battles that were
it goes hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
So the highs are high, but the lows are low. So if you make a low really low, you make the highs also really high. But you got to be careful because some people might not be able to handle that emotional spike and depression, right? So,
well, it is a cool journey, and I really enjoy watching the progress of the game the whole way. And it's kind of exciting because we still, even though we've read everything there is to know about Star Citizen, we still don't exactly know what it's going to be at the end of the day, right?
I'm not sure Sig knows either.
Yeah, well, I mean, and they shouldn't. Nobody actually knows, right? Like you have an idea, but you don't know how the meta is going to shift or you're going to put your idea out there and all of a sudden people are going to like exploit it and like ruin the gameplay loop you thought was going to happen, so it's going to turn into something, but it's already very fun. I talked about it being my tipping point already where it's like the amount of bugs versus the amount of fun, are finally getting to that tipping point where I'm like spending more and more time in the game. I'm just flying around trying everything right now. That tipping point is going to start hitting for a lot more people in the very near future, I think. And kind of an exciting time for the game. Yep. More people for you to shoot, man.
For all people to shoot. Everybody engages.
Shoot at.
I mean, today I was down by the river and we were just goofing around, and, it's just, you're a PvP guy like me. You know what I mean? Like you play Battlefield all the time. Like
I'm an everything guy though. That's the thing. So like people approach Battlefield and they'll say, and like some guys just fly the jets. And if that guy is just flying the jets and I go up in a jet, I lose to him every time. Right. But I'm okay. I'm pretty decent at flying jets. So I can beat like 9 out of 10 guys. But if that top tier dude's in there, he's going to beat me every time. So I like to have a good like experience of the whole game. I want to experience everything usually when I get into a game. But I also just want to play just that game. Like I want a game that gives me a wealth of experiences. So like, I love PvP and I've definitely got that competitive gene in me where I'm like, I want to be better than that guy. And I'm going to do what I need to do to be better and win the fight next time. Right.
Yeah.
But, I went out yesterday with another YouTuber and he taught me how to mine and actually I had a really good time with it. Cause I've mined an Eve, and that's like the most boring gameplay loop you could ever imagine. It's so boring. Could you imagine
people do that without going AFK? Like I can't imagine doing that without going AFK.
No. I mean, like literally, it's like when they show the trailer of the miners drinking coffee and stuff. Like, I mean, like that's what you have to do when you mine an Eve. But in this, like. You got these power levels. You got to like dial it in. Now you have all these mining attachments for the ship that's going to make it better for different kinds of ore. There's a decent gameplay loop and meta behind it. And then they're coming out with those things you stick on the side of asteroids now. So you could like maybe crack a bigger rock. Like there's a lot of depth to it. And I find myself just enjoying that. I'm like, man, like there's just depth to this. And it's like, I think Euro Truck Simulator is going to lose all its player base to Star Citizen in a couple of years once the cargo hauling stuff comes out, right?
Euro Truck Simulator. Now you can do it in space and it'll be better.
Yeah, they're just taking all these gameplay loops that exist in other games and they're just like cramming depth into it where you're just like, I never imagined a mining game with that level of depth to it. And they're even adding more to it, right? Like they're only like, maybe not even halfway through the mining gameplay loop in terms of all the ships and features and stuff they're going to add to it and like the team play elements and hauling cargo rather than hauling it back yourself.
Refining and
yeah,
it's gonna be exciting.
So I'm like, I get excited by that, and I also just want to try like shipping once that loop gets more interesting. I want to try
that. Could be actually really lethargic and like relaxing. You know, you're like flying over the, because like, you know, today I was flying over Microtech with the new clouds and and by the river, and I was just like, it looks like DCS, like it's like looks beautiful. Amazing. It's just beautiful. And you know, imagine, you know, being in a shipping ship and you're flying over the city and you're coming in, you're landing, you're selling your cargo, and then you're getting more stuff and you're flying around. Like I remember, you know, shipping stuff in EVE Online, and I was kind of enjoying it.
Yeah.
But the immersiveness with Star Citizen really pulls you in, right? And
you might get a kick out of this game called Frontier Pilot Simulator. Very weird niche indie game on Steam. But I think you can even play it with dual sticks. I'm not sure. I was definitely playing it with HOTAS, but it might have dual stick support. You're on an alien planet flying a VTOL aircraft. And you can get different kinds of VTOL aircraft, but it's a purely shipping game where you have to take cargo from one place to another, or a VIP or something. But they took the shipping gameplay and they like just blew it open, where they're like, okay, you've got this cargo on board that cannot exceed 5 G-forces. So when you come in a land, you better hit that landing just right. When you accelerate, you better ease into it. And now guess what? You've got limited fuel and time to get it there. So now you got to like hit those acceleration curves perfectly. You got to come in just right. You got to enter VTOL mode and use the atmosphere or hit a certain level. All of a sudden there's radiation at certain levels. You can't fly. There's weird obstacles and weather things you got to dodge. When you load up, I hope they add this to Star Citizen, because I think this could be one of the cooler ways to make shipping more interesting. So you got some VTOL aircraft in the game, right? Some shipping ships can even do it. But in this game, when you load it up to the max with cargo, you could barely get it off the ground sometimes. So you're like, okay, I need to like ram my throttle. Now I'm losing fuel at this crazy rate. I got to hit my destination perfectly. I got to get the right altitude to use the least amount of fuel. Like it had all this levels of nuance and depth to it. I'm like, they could add most of that into Star Citizen and like see how it works, you know? Because imagine that, loading up your ship with tons of cargo, coming into Atmo and be like, oh my God, I got to crank Afterburner to the max just so I can decel enough to set this thing down on the ground and not lose everything I just bought, you know? So like that kind of
a 6-hour trip, you got like 100 million in there, and it's just you're like, no.
Oh no. I hope by the time you're doing a 6-hour trip, you've definitely got some time behind the sticks, you know, and you know what you're doing. But yeah, for sure. We're getting ganked after a 6-hour trip.
Oh God.
But why don't we wrap it up, man? I'm gonna give you an intro at the start of the podcast, but in case anybody isn't aware of your channel or what you do stream on Twitch TV. You want to throw out your links and stuff?
Sure. You can follow me on YouTube at Avenger1, and you can follow me on Twitch at Avenger_1.
Yeah, and you put out a lot of educational dogfighting videos on YouTube. So if anybody's looking to get into fighting and fighter pilots, you put together a playlist, which is kind of like the essentials of like, if you're just getting into it, these are all the things you need to learn. And then once you learn that, you can start kind of getting into the rest of your more in-depth meta content.
Yeah. Well,
and some of it's just entertaining. Yeah.
Yeah. Some of it is. Yeah. Some of it's just memes.
Most of it's boring. No. No, but you put some cool stuff there. I really like the one of you coming in on Jumptown. I think you're in an Arrow.
Oh, God, yeah.
And just like engaging everybody, and they got ballistas shooting after you.
Man, if you haven't experienced Jumptown yet, you are in for a treat.
I've experienced the conga line of Jumptown. So I was sort of like, what the heck is this? Like,
I'll show you a real Jumptown.
All right. Next Jumptown, I'll link up with you guys, man.
That's right.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it very much. Mm-hmm. And check him out. He's on Twitch and YouTube. Thanks for watching, guys. And we'll catch you next time. Peace out.